It's another week in the For Your Reference household, and we are toasting Bel-Air Mansion and otherwise to the many so far reboots and remakes that we've already covered on this podcast. Mortal Kombat comes to mind, Chucky, Halloween. I guess we'll see how Bel-Air fares on that pendulum of continuing to reconsume consumable media. Let's get on with the show. Hey, friends and jawn lovers. Welcome back to the For Your Reference podcast. You got your host, Katie.
And Oti.
Well, this is a story all about sad. A sad boy going to some sad rich people to live and die in LA. Is that right, Oti?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into general stats and information. In other announcements, welcome. Spoiler. Possibly slapping, right, OT?
Mm-hmm.
So this show was based off of the original Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. We're not necessarily going to cover the show today. And according to our In the Alley sort of statistics, I think we're all in the same sort of age group to be aware and really love Fresh Prince, but we're really not going to get into that today. We're really going to focus on the reboot. So this was created off of Andy and Susan Borowitz, based on a concept by Benny Medina, Jeff Pollock, Above the Rim. Some great classics that we need to get into the podcast, developed by Morgan Cooper, Malcolm Spellman, TJ Brady, and Rashid Newson. In regards to cast. You always joke about how I said Daniel Kaluuya is an up-and-comer forever, and I will always hold that bastion, OT, but there are some casts that I would like to keep an eye on, but just capturing off the top in IMDb, we have Jabari Banks, Cassandra Freeman, Jimmy Akimbola, and we got to give a shout out to Ollie Sholaton. Oh, apparently not. Let's get into first impressions. Like I mentioned, we will be covering the release 2022 Peacock TV series, but feel free to give a little peppering about Fresh Prince. I'm assuming it made its way all over to Kenya. And how did you feel about this show? Because we definitely went on a roller coaster watching these 10 episodes. So take it away, my love.
Yeah, I loved the original Fresh Prince. I think most of the people did. I really didn't know what to expect with this. We'd seen some nondescript trailer. I wouldn't even call it a trailer. It was more of a teaser of what to expect with the show.
Very dramatic.
Yep.
Very much drama.
And to be honest, I wasn't keen on watching it at first. Or I think even watching the pilot, I was a bit skeptical. I didn't know whether or not we'll continue watching it. But for some reason, we watched the second episode. I think we were just bored. And we're like, let's just rip this Band-Aid. But that's what got us hooked. And we've not looked back.
Yeah, and I think it was from some encouragement from our beloved friends and lovers, because I remember posting on Twitter and Instagram that we're pretty much done with this show, and we were encouraged by quite a few people to continue watching the show. And I guess just generally, I love the Fresh Prince. It's not to the level of Sister, where I can recall Lisa getting a scarf stuck in the rotisserie chicken aisle or the grocery store. And I guess that's a shout outs to the Sister friends and lovers out there. But I did have a good time watching Fresh Prince. Like you, I was very dubious about the concept of turning such a jovial, consumable sort of week-to-week sitcom, if you will, into a very dramatic sort of format. I was very dubious to it. But I guess the good thing, podcast watching and many other tasting-wise, we always give something a go. And I think it was credit to that we actually tried it. It's very rare, friends and lovers, where we will not even try something.
Mm.
So like you said, even though we had watched the first couple of episodes, there still wasn't a lot there. I would say, friends and lovers, if you're listening to this episode because you're like, oh, I give up, I don't want to keep watching. I've watched a couple of episodes too. Well, we got to the end and I would say maybe not, but there was a whole journey and there were some interesting sort of arcs with the characters. So I would encourage you to continue. But after that pilot, I can definitely understand why us and maybe other people decided not to continue or felt like it was a hard slog to continue because I guess understandably so, but no one is asking you as well. So I don't really put a lot of stock in the argument of, there's a lot riding on their shoulders. There's a lot of expectation. No one asks you to do it. So if you're going to reboot something, if you're going to regurgitate what we've already gurgitated, like it needs to be done in a way that is interesting, that is compelling in some sort of way. And I think to get us to be steeped in the dramatic sort of sphere of Bel-Air was really, OT would enjoy this Friends reference, a pivot. It was a very hard pivot. It was a very hard pivot to get us to where we needed to be and what we knew the show to be. And very naturally, because we've grown up and, for a long time, even though Will Smith became a blockbuster, oh, there you go, Bad Boys. Go and check out our Bad Boys episode. But to do it, and to do it when no one is asking, it was definitely a hard ask to do. And I would say, even for myself, it took me a while to stop being annoying, stop pulling my glasses up and be like, that's not how Uncle Phil was. But to be fair, rest in love and peace and power, James Avery, because Uncle Phil definitely had a presence to him. And I guess you can say he had a physical stature, but he commanded so much in a room, right? So it was that sort of disassociation I had to do if I was going to enjoy it on some sort of level. Once we got past the pilot, I would say, it really felt like they tried to fit everyone into the pilot. And unfortunately, that kind of, like for all of the sort of care that went into some of the characters, Ashley kind of didn't really evolve past the pilot, unfortunately. And I think because Will and Ashley had such a cute sort of dynamic in the original, I was expecting a bit more. The treatment on Ashley's character felt very season 3 of The Chi to me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a deep doodah cut right there. But I think generally, I really did find myself enjoying week to week watching the episodes. I would say maybe from episode 3 onwards. But man, like maybe we shouldn't start with this and we should continue being positive. But that finale, OT.
Yeah, such a disappointment. I think they were building up to something grandiose that just didn't happen for me. And I kept on questioning, wait, what? Was that the secret? Was that it? Are you kidding me?
Unsubscribe from Oprah's book club if that's the secret.
Yeah, I was like, why would Will get angry at that? Why would it destroy the family?
Yeah.
It's shitty, but not to that degree.
To draw it out. To draw it out and to bring the big mandem, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, he deserves his own section, and we will come to the mandem in a second. But obviously, we're going to kick this show off with Will. It was very cringy. Again, a lot of the pilot I would put in the bin. Like I would probably start from episode 2. But there was something about the setting up of his character. Like he just came off a bit precious, like even his mom, it was like she couldn't be on the screen and not mention that the crown was waiting for him. He had to just be ready to wear it.
Yeah, that and the fact that I think they mentioned John in a million times in the first episode alone.
And I believe it's Jawn, John.
Jawn. Wow. It's like watching Kin and hearing the say grand every time.
Gigs of Dublin.
The take on Will was interesting. I think they gave him a lot to work with. Yes, the pilot was a big mess, but once we get through that, we get to see Will and his story develop in a more interesting way. We get to see him struggle with the repercussions of, him fucking up Trey's life forever and really not dealing with it or even thinking about it.
Well, let's be clear about this. And I don't think there was any sort of remorse on Will's part. And I guess you could just chalk it up to being Khalid's young, dumb, and broke, or maybe Wayne Brady's young, dumb, and broke, right? But it did feel like he was taking no responsibility. But again, without having any children, I would imagine if you keep propping up your son to be a fucking prince, he's going to be a fucking asshole. But you're absolutely right, because he's the one that wanted the smoke. He's the one that wanted to go and fight Darnell. It made sense for Trey to have a gun because out here in these streets, it's not safe.
No, streets need a body.
Streets do need a body. Wow. A compelling dramatic series, OT. But yeah, there were definitely some kinks that we were working through in the first few sort of episodes. But what I really liked about it was sort of the dynamic between him and Trey, because Trey been the same, nothing changed about him. And there's nothing wrong with Will changing. There's nothing wrong with Will taking the opportunities. But there's a really poignant scene between the two of them when Trey's finishing up his visit and they're having this conversation. Which I think also is a callback to one of the, I think it was in the first episode where Jazz is talking to Will and he's like, this city will make you forget who you are. But I think the John forgot who the John was Johnin. Speaking of West Philly or Philadelphia in general, Quinta Brunson doesn't use John all the time. The kids don't use John in Abbott Elementary.
Yeah, they're just not doing Philly right, aren't they?
But I really like the levels that we had there because, again, there was nothing wrong with Will being given and taking advantage of opportunities that were handed to him. But at the same time, there is that sense of cleaning up your messes, right? You might not be a full adult, but you are a young man and you kind of need to take responsibility for the mess that you made. And, it was a cute little sitcom intro. I got in one little fight and my mom got scared, but that was like elongated and was a compelling theme throughout all of this show. And I guess while we're here, what did you think about the storyline, without having context of, gangs in America? But what were your thoughts on Darnell going all the way to try and track him down in LA? Did that feel a bit incredulous to you?
It did, but I just chalked it up to they need drama.
Well, it definitely matched the big man tings that Jeffrey was bringing as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Jeffrey is a fixer man. But his insistence on following and really hooked up on getting Will was a bit ridiculous. But I think how it was dealt with or how it disappeared, it was just a moment. It was a scene with Jeffrey saying, "It's taken care of." And then next minute, he's dead.
Well, you did say streets need a body. We just didn't know it was going to be from a Bretonian man. But I thought that was quite interesting, and not for nothing, but it did remind me of The Wire when I think it was Bodie that was they realized that the radio kind of stopped outside of Baltimore, and realizing how big the world is. So in my head, your local beef stays in the local area. But anyway, so with Will's character, but I'll tell you what, I cannot succinctly pinpoint when, why, and how, but I came to become endeared to Will, i.e. Jabari Banks. And if we can talk very quickly about Jabari Banks, I am excited to see where he's going to go. I don't know if it transcends out of this, and I kind of worry about this with Danzan Idris outside of Snowfall, but if you say it outside of the context of this episode, I'll deny that I ever said it. But I do wonder, how far-reaching Jabari Banks' career will be outside of this, because he made me feel things. I didn't expect to. And I guess also surprised with Ollie making me feel things with Carlton. But we'll get to that. But I think just generally, if we're talking about primo talent, Jabari Banks is definitely one to watch.
Oh, for sure. He does bring the feels to this. It takes some warming up to. Same with Ollie. But we do get there at the end. And I think they're definitely one to watch.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you want to say about Will? I would say that, him hooking up with Lisa, come on, man. Hundreds.
People love messiness, eh?
Yeah. No, at that point, you do love messiness because I'm sure there are many, many more, young women, young Black women in Bel-Air, if that's what we're talking about. He was just Michael Ealying that shit, and we'll come to Michael Ealy in a second. But I really liked Will. I think tonally, if we're talking tonally, there were definitely moments that they try to push, Will's sort of goofiness in moments where it didn't necessarily make sense. It was still a forced moment, but I would say one of my favorite moments of him bringing the levity and being that sort of goofy is when Phil Banks, when they were doing the whole Yumacraw thing. And they had, as Issa Rae would say in Insecure, is that choreography?
Yep.
I think that was quite a cute moment. There are some cute moments. It didn't start off cute, but when Will and Carlton were petitioning, they were trying to get votes for Phil or for Uncle Phil. It feels wrong to say Phil. Uncle Phil. They did have a brief sort of tiffs in regards to politics, and it needs to go beyond proselyting. It needs to actually service the community in a meaningful sort of way. Invite them to your $1,000 table dinners. I don't know. I think tonally it doesn't need to do anything because who am I really? But I think if something can be worked on, it can definitely be the tonality of the show.
Yeah, agree.
Who do you want to go to next? Is Carlton the natural transition?
Of course.
Okay. Thoughts, feelings?
So at start, he comes off very unlikable. I don't jive with him at all. It takes a bit of warming up to until they start giving him a story, because we get introduced to him just being the acceptable Black kid in a white school.
Yeah.
And it rubs Will and me the wrong way with how he accepts to be treated, or he just thinks it's, this is just for fun. And until he starts realizing what all that means to him as a Black person, I think that's when we start to open up to him and how he's feeling and all the anxiety he has to deal with. And it also explains his drug taking, so it's a slow burn with him, but we do get there at the end, and that's what I'm thankful for. By the end of it, I think he is becoming one of the most likable characters in this.
Yeah.
Which is wild. I didn't think I'd ever say that.
Credit to writing. Definitely credit to writing. But I would also say credit to us for being open to the experience and the friends we made along the way. I absolutely agree with what you're saying, because there is a whole conversation about code switching. There is a whole conversation about having to play the amicable Black person role in a society, in a workplace, in a school. And that's its own conversation. But I think when we were first introduced to Carlton, it felt as though he was more than happy to take that Reggae Jean Page, Chicken George from Roots sort of role. Like even if he had no choice to play the role, he was willingly casting himself into that role, right? And I think that was part of the barrier. I don't think it was necessarily that, Carlton was so happy-go-lucky in the original, therefore I couldn't be on board with this one. I think it's just he was like Passion of the Christ, Carlton. There was no levity. He was Wriggle Your Big Toe, Uma Thurman in Kill Bill. There was no reprieve for this Carlton character. And, he was he definitely had his like substance abuse issues as well. But it felt like a lot at once, right? We're still getting to know you guys. And it's like, damn, like give us a second. Any highlights for you for Carlton's character?
I think when he realizes he doesn't own Lisa and the world doesn't revolve around him.
Young men don't own young women?
Apparently not.
What a world.
The things people have to learn every day. Wild.
And relearn, right?
Yeah. I think up until that point, that's when it started becoming more likable.
Yeah.
Because, he just had to accept that shit.
But did he become more likable, or did they just give him a couple of scenes where he was amicable with Will and then they stopped showing him for a bit?
That would work.
Yeah.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder, doesn't it? At the time we see him, he's speaking sense, you know. I think when he turned to Will, that was a really good moment when he was like, you know, I've had my problems, I've had anxiety, and just them having a bond.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the best moments in the show as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think with Carlton's character, I think when he allowed himself to be vulnerable and he allowed Will to be there for him, like, I don't know, this made me roll my eyes a bit. I'm pretty sure it was Will's mum that was talking to Carlton being like, oh, you always said you wanted a brother. This is kind of the way that God gave it to you. And I'm like, mate, like, you don't need to bring the cheese. Like, we get that they're having a brotherly bond, right? You don't have to put out your crown is waiting for you. You just need to be ready to put it on cheese. Yeesh. But Vi definitely has got some demons she needs to deal with. But let's continue on with the Banks kids. I'm going to love Coco Jones. I wasn't aware of her in her Disney sort of part of her career. I like her. I don't know. I really enjoyed Hillary in the original. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a ditzy, aloof woman. Like, I think there's still room for that. I think there's still an appetite for that. And I feel that that's still part of the experience of being a woman. You know, some of you motherfuckers are daft as fuck. Like, it's okay. But you dress nice and you're cute and you're fun. Like, I really enjoyed that Hillary. I couldn't get past her just being chill and normal. Like, I because in that sense, she doesn't stand out. She kind of, like, I don't know, between you and IoT, like, I could have taken her or leave her. And I'm not saying Coco Jones. I'm saying Hillary's character. She was kind of just there.
Yeah, she was just there. And no, of course, she wanted to pull herself as intelligent. She stand on her own. But then, on the other hand, relying on a parent for everything.
Yeah.
I'm like, you can't
living
have
in
it
the
both
pool
ways.
house. Yeah.
You know, you can't chastise or criticize your parents for doing one thing. And then the next minute you're still like,
accepting opportunities that Aunt Viv set up for her.
Yeah.
And then her going on Instagram or whatever equivalent of live and complaining about representation. And it's like, no, babes. No, it doesn't work that way. And I think she was also forgetting to check her privilege at the door because, you know, as much as she's all high and mighty, she can afford to say no to such a life-changing opportunity. And that is fucking privilege right there.
Yeah, and I love the fact that Jazz pulled her up on a lot of her
can
shit.
we talk about Jazz? Friends and lovers, since we were talking about the men, Jeffrey, Plebs is something that, well, we reference it a lot, but, you know, Plebs, the TV show, it was very Lithia Vase, like at a very particular angle. I never thought Jordan L. Jones looked like Tupac until you reinforced it, and there was a particular angle, and I'm like, that's the money shot.
Just start to tilt the vase a bit.
No, but you're absolutely right. But you know, I said it a couple of times. I don't think Hillary deserved Jazz's patience and his wisdom, and they fell into the bedchambers quite quickly, actually.
Yeah.
That's not even in a slut-shaming way, just in the sense that you thought they were going to tease out, will they, won't they, Rachel Ross. See, I'm coming for your friends. I know your references. Don't make me try and watch it again.
Oh, but they did multiple times. It's just that they broke up afterwards.
Oh, did they? Or Castle, or Bones. You know, whenever you get the characters of will they, won't they, I didn't realize it was going to happen so soon. And I want to focus on a particular, because I think Hillary got, if we're not talking about Will and even on a certain extent Carlton, I think Hillary got a lot of meaty sort of storylines, if you'll pardon the chef or Insta-chef pun. I want to talk about this because, well, first of all, the footage that was gathered at that party, I thought that was going to create a bombshell in Uncle Phil's political race. I thought that was going to just wreak havoc, right? Because there were actual conversations. I think Jazz was having it with Trey, talking about the fact that Uncle Phil saved Will, right? There was so much that was being discussed in way of being able to criminate this family, right?
Yeah.
I thought that was going to amount to something. And, you know, I'm actually surprised it didn't. And it would be weird to drag that out into the second season because this show's now been announced into a second season. But what I wanted to talk about was the concept of like an influencer house. I felt really gross about that. I thought it was going to get very Me Too. And I would have applauded the show if they were to take that sort of angle because, you know, I think it's the 2020s equivalent of Stranger Danger, right?
Yeah, I'd go with Laka Simpy.
Nice. But yeah, I thought that was going to amount to something else. And we probably don't have a lot of time today to go through it. But when we were watching the show and part of our reluctance to continue, you know, I tweeted that Carlton is eventually going to learn the hard lesson that rich privilege is not white privilege. And I think he did learn that. And it was heartbreaking because we got to a point where we, you know, actually cared for this motherfucker. But to see him go through that journey, you know, kudos to the show for taking him through that. But I don't think Hillary went all the way there in regards to acknowledging her sort of privilege. First of all, it's her laughing at people in the comments telling her she's crazy for turning down, you know, the sponsorship deals and, you know, all of these opportunities that are falling on her lap. That's one thing. But the second thing was her not realizing, well, first of all, that a contract is legally binding, but even just in like a normal, hello, I'm a human of the world, honoring a fucking contract.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just dip out when you feel like it. And what was it like 40, 50 grand?
50 grand she had to pay.
Yeah. But it's like, even if you do pay that, that's not good business, right? And I don't know. And maybe it's just the enticings, but I also felt like she was too young to be duped like a elderly pensioner getting scammed over the phone. Like she
didn't read the contract. She just signed. Who does that?
But it should have been way more due diligence. It was weird. I know Aunt Viv got too involved and she said she would back off. But if it's getting to the point that Hillary's actually signing a contract for official work that she's actually going to do, that's kind of where you step in as a parent and like do the due diligence.
I don't even blame Aunt Viv for that.
Because she's too busy being googly-eyed.
That and the fact that Hillary was all about her stepping on her own and she's old enough to take care of business.
Yeah.
So her taking care of business is signing a random paper she doesn't read. I'm being shocked that there's a clause that she has to pay money to break contract.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, bloody ridiculous. And this is where, like, a lot of times you wonder what the life of a rich black person is, where in one hand, in one extreme, you're so cautious and you have to take care of yourself. You have to wonder about society. You have to look at everything you say, do, act, whatever, all that shit. And there's some rich motherfuckers out here that don't know the life.
But my mother doesn't look like you, OT.
Oh, my father doesn't look like you, mate.
That's a Tandiwe reference, friends and lovers. Speaking of being out of touch. But I think that was part of what was annoying to me about Hillary, because age-wise, she's older than Will and Carlton, right? She should have known better. Like, there's one thing about being naive, and then there's one thing of being, like, unbelievably stupid.
Yeah.
And the way, I don't know, and Actually, I know we don't have a lot of time, but I always try and pull my women up and hold my women accountable. I didn't care for it is a multi-layered, complex, nuanced conversation if we want to talk about women and owning their sexuality. I am always ready. Meet me on my personal Twitter and we can go toe to toe with me, the champ, right? I am always ready to have that conversation. What I didn't care for was embracing, like there was a point where Hillary was embracing her sexuality as a woman, as a young woman. Nothing wrong with that, right? But again, it's too nuanced. I'm saying it's too nuanced, so meet me on Twitter. So that's probably not the right format.
Speak with your chest.
No, but what really bothers me is she was owning it and she was loving herself. She didn't like it through the lens of Kylo. Fine. But it came at a fucking price, did it not? Where were all your principles when they started waving Victoria's Secret money in your face? Fuck off. Nah, seriously, fuck off.
It was two pronged though, right? On one hand,
I'll prong you in a second with my sexuality.
On one hand, she enjoyed the commercial benefits that it could afford her.
Yeah.
And when she got feedback from other Black women that, you know what, go for it. You know, a lot of the time Black women are seen in such a way, so why not own it?
But there's nothing wrong with it, right? That's what I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with it. And that's why I get so fucking sick of basic fucking women making jokes about starting an OnlyFans. Fucking start it or shut the fuck up, because sex work is work and women that work in the sex industry deserve respect, especially from other fucking women. Fuck off.
Speak.
I was speaking until you silenced me by saying speak, motherfucker.
Mate, I'm just being an ally here.
They speak feminism in what?
I'm all for it, mate.
Yep. OT is an ally to women, just like Jerome OT Tarantino is an ally to the Black community.
Oh, wow.
Well, let's leave Hillary alone because we have so much more to go through. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Jazz, but I would say he was one of my favorite characters. I was just smiling every time he was on the screen. And maybe it's also because I knew he was going to bring a balanced performance. It wasn't going to be like Ollie snorting himself knee deep every time.
Yeah, because they use him as the fixer. The sort of...
Don't call him the fixer after calling Jeffrey the fixer.
No, the fixer. Like he's there as a soundboard for Will and Hillary and just solves the issues and problems. He's the mini Jeffrey, come to think of it. Like,
hey.
He's there solely to be the sounding board for Hillary and Will. And he'll be there to pull them up on either their shit or to give them advice that, you know, you'd expect Uncle Phil to be given. He is different from the Jazz we're used to.
You don't want to get some wings and get busy?
We all do. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed his performances. I think he brought a real grounding to this.
He did. Again, you wouldn't think it from the original Fresh Prince, but I do want to see more of him in general. You know, and like you said, he brings a lot of groundedness, very reminiscent of OT, of not having social media, not caring about numbers and that sort of thing. But he was very refreshing. He didn't have as much reach like Jeffrey, for example, where Jeffrey had like a heartfelt, you know, I'll do some dirt for you moment for every character in this show. But I did enjoy Jazz. Is there anything you want to say about Ashley? Because I don't think I have a lot to say about her.
Good for her for being queer.
Yeah. Congrats, gay.
Yeah. That's in there.
Yeah, I guess we've done our Pride Month a couple of months early then. I think it was nice. There was a moment between her and Aunt Viv, you know, where Aunt Viv was like, you know, you can be open to tell me these things. And I feel like, you know, as a previous teenager. Like that would feel cringe. Like you want the option to be able to talk to your parents about sex, but you don't actually want to talk to them about it.
Yeah, but I think it was good for Aunt Viv to just say she's there regardless.
Well, speaking of Aunt Viv and someone that was always there, let's talk about Michael Ealy's character, like Birdman rubbing his hands, looking out the window gif.
You know what you're going to get with Mike Ealy. He was there to bring the sexual awakening in everyone, and
he is literally the OG panty collector. He doesn't want to be, but he turns out as the panty collector.
Yeah, you know what you're gonna get with him. The minute we saw him in the screen, we just knew how it's gonna roll.
Yeah,
we know it's gonna confuse Aunt Viv. We knew it's gonna make Uncle Phil jealous, and it all did.
Save your AI writing your scripts. You just put Michael Ealy in there, and we can figure out the equation from there.
You say no more.
Black Lady Sketch Show is back and Michael Ealy appeared in there too. And you just wonder at this point, his agent, you know, like there are people probably, Robin Thiedy's probably like, hey, we'd like to have Michael Ealy on the show. Let me explain his character. And Michael Ealy's agent is like, no, don't worry, it's fine.
He'll be there. He knows.
He'll be there with his light eyes and his sexy ass. Don't worry about it. He'll show up.
But it's always good to see him.
Do you think it's unbelievable that he didn't try and make a move on Aunt Viv, though?
I think it's coming.
Oh, okay. So there's going to be a to be continued.
Yeah. Actually, I don't think it's coming. I think if Uncle Phil would have continued treating Aunt Viv the way he was, it definitely would have happened. But he seemed to have switched his game literally at the end.
Yuck.
That might save him from that.
I don't know, OT. You know, whenever I think about like power couples, Tabitha Brown is really the only example of where you have the husband holding it down and now it's Tabitha's turn to have success and now it's her turn, like it's her husband's turn to take a break, right? I think that's the only time that dynamic works, because when it came to Uncle Phil, I don't know, like that dynamic, I personally, come and meet me either in my personal Twitter or on the podcast Twitter, because I'm ready to fucking fight. I do not believe that Uncle Philip Banks in the 2022 Bel-Air show believes that women are equal. Like I think at this point she's like the fucking toe, not the side of his rib. I don't believe that Uncle Phil sees Aunt Viv as an equal. I think he loves her as much as he could ever love a woman. Maybe not as much as Michael Ealy could love a woman. But, and by the way, I am all for the mess. Bring the mess. I'm ready for Michael Ealy to just mess up Aunt Viv's joint. I'm ready for him to start painting his dick on her canvas. I am ready.
You mean you want him to be all up in Aunt Viv's jawn?
Oh, man. But I genuinely don't. I just feel like Uncle Phil is one of those men that don't see women as equals. Even the ones, especially the ones that they love.
Well, a good example is he spent a lot of the money from their personal account on his campaign.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even he didn't even ask or discuss it with Aunt Viv.
Yeah.
He was like telling her after the fact.
Yeah.
And
he was trying to make it sound like he was asking for permission, but he did it already.
And Viv was like, what the fuck? And it's like, I'm not going to ask for permission to spend my money.
Oh. Speaking of what the fuck, we love Dwayne, but if Dwayne is your campaign manager, some shady shit is going down.
Yeah, you fucked up somewhere.
having Jeffrey as his sidekick and then having Dwayne as his campaign manager. It was nice seeing Dwayne though.
It was good seeing him. It's been a while, man.
But yeah, I don't know. I think the way that they've laid the foundation for Aunt Viv and Uncle Phil, I don't know. For me personally, I don't know if we're ever going to get to a point where I believe that Uncle Phil sees, Aunt Viv as an equal. Exactly what you're saying. Like he was trying to make it like, he was asking permission and he's like, lol, too bad. I already did it. And it's like, what the fuck? And then, they had that heartfelt moment moment in the hotel, you know, where Uncle Phil, and this is kind of where we learn, because I think a lot of the time, especially when it comes to women becoming mothers and having children, you know, and I think even with us, we assumed with Aunt Viv, she just forgot herself in the process. She lost herself in the process, which wasn't wrong. Like, it wasn't entirely false, but it wasn't entirely the truth either. And, you know, Uncle Phil talks about how she was so tortured by the whole creative, not necessarily the creative process, but all of the admin and then the orchestration and the politics that happens for being a young Black creative, right? So he was talking about that. Okay, cool. I understand that, Uncle Phil, but what was it? 15 fucking 17 years? Where were you that whole time then?
True, but I don't necessarily disagree with him.
Oh,
because Aunt Viv was putting her trepidation in getting back or being an artist fully as Uncle Phil not pushing her, and I'm like, okay, there's a line, you know. There's a lot of shit we can throw at Uncle Phil, but him being the sole reason that you didn't become an artist, you know, that's not right. Because at the end of the day, it's up to you. You know yourself better than anyone else. You cannot put your career or what you want to do on the hands of someone else. You just cannot.
Friends and lovers, you might have heard OT speaking. I could hear Michael Ealy knocking on my door.
I'll join in. Don't worry about that.
Like the Key and Peele high five.
Yeah, for sure. We're both getting the treat, mate.
Admission for two in Katie's jawn. Oh, yeah, I don't know. I think I enjoy Uncle Phil as a character, although I will say, and I forgot to mention it when we were talking about Carlton, like Uncle Phil, he was a bit harsh towards Will, but he became endeared to Will, and he had many tender, vulnerable moments, and he said things to Will that we never saw him ever say to Carlton, which was very sad.
Yeah, it was, but at least he realized that he also needed to give Carlton some one-on-one time. It felt a bit too Will-leaning at times. Interesting.
Friends and lovers, for those of us that have joined the podcast now in our 4th year, especially if you've joined us in very passionate relationship episodes, including the first time we covered Insecure, OT has a hankering for defending shitty Black men. And I'm seeing a pattern, because every time I say something about Uncle Phil, I didn't necessarily put him in the category of shitty Black men characters, but you're making it very clear to me that he is part of your brethren.
Wow.
When you think you're Michael Ealy, but you're actually Uncle Phil. The last character that I want to bring up is Lisa's dad, Fred. Thoughts, feelings? They did try to have a conversation about defunding the police, and then Uncle Phil kind of backtracked on that. But what did you feel about Fred's presence in the show?
It didn't feel like those, because a lot of the time when you're watching American TV and you get this commercials with a Black Republican talking about,
I'm everyone's worst nightmare.
I'm their worst right. They want to defund the police? Let's defend the police. Like, okay, mate.
I'm brave.
Well, he didn't feel to that extent, but at least those semblance or a line that Uncle Phil wouldn't cross in terms of tarnishing his name. We know that he cheated on Lisa's mom while she was sick and dying.
Yeah.
Which is fucked up.
Yeah.
But outside of that, we don't really get to delve into him as a person or a character in this show. He's more a peripheral figure. We know he exists, and he's just there because.
And you know what I'm realizing? We haven't really talked about Lisa, but Lisa kind of pisses me off.
Oh, how so?
She's too naive, and she's too traditional conservative leaning for the fucking 2020s. And she's too young to be acting like that. A lot of her betrayal, a lot of that shit was about the fact that Will wasn't ready to share his trauma. Fuck right off. And stop treating your sexuality like it's a favor to men. Fuck off. Like, we can talk about it. I don't think she was overly religious. Fucking talk about it. We're in the 2020s. She's a young woman. Come on now.
I hear you, but I also feel like Will should have just been truthful. Like,
no, but it wasn't like he was going out of his way to be devious. We all know, friends and lovers, as much as we want to open up to someone, unless we're ready, come on. We're talking about young. We're talking about young, famous, and African, right? We talked about Annie with Two-Face and all of his many-faced children all over Africa, right? He's got more than one African queen. You can't fucking tell someone shit if you're not ready to tell it yourself, right? So I don't think it was on Will. Why do I need to tell you the most sad, most depressing shit of my life for you to feel endeared to me? Fuck off.
So that you feel that you're connected by everything. And
that, friends and lovers, are called trauma bonds. That's not a healthy way to connect to someone. I don't know. Friends and lovers, again, I've got lots of time, and apparently I find nuance in Twitter, so find me there. But yeah, I definitely don't want to talk anymore. Is there anything else you want to say about Lisa?
No, you've said enough.
Do you have any, not necessarily predictions, do you have any hopes of what season 2 will bring?
Don't drag out the Will and his father beef and nonsense. Just.
Oh, Marlon Wayans. We didn't even give a shout out to Marlon Wayans.
It was good seeing him, man. I'm glad he's getting roles recently.
I still don't buy him as a serious actor.
He was a staple of our households growing up. It was wild, not having their family on the screen for a minute, but it's good seeing them back, They've done a lot, so it's good, man.
Yeah, and he's going to have a comedy special coming out soon.
Yeah, with Tony Baker as well. Yeah, and Shante too, man.
Nice. Very nice. I want to see Hillary get more. I wanted to be held accountable for her lack of naivety. I want to see more of that. Shout outs to Karuchi. Karuchi continues to be in shit we're watching.
Yeah. It took some getting used to in games people play. Like Lauren London just disappearing. You're like, okay.
Shout outs to Lauren London. She deserves more love because she was holding that on her lovely shoulders.
Yeah, and you don't even realize it until it's gone, man. Fucking hell.
Well, when we talk about our BET shows, we're near the end of the podcast, right? Thank you for joining us, friends and lovers, another week in the For Your Reference household. We're going to finish off in a segment we call For Your Reference. OT.
Has nothing to do with Bel-Air as a show or any sort of close touch points in any case. But it's something that we watched recently on HBO Max. Rothaniel, the stand-up by Gerard Carmichael. Mm-hmm. It was really good. It's very intimate and one of the best things we've watched this year.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure. Give it a go.
Absolutely. And it's really sad because we continue to watch interviews on Seth Meyers. Gerard was on there, and it's fucking sad because you can see that he is dying for the love and acceptance from his mum. Right. He talked about it in the special, and he talked about it in the Seth Meyers interview, and you can see, and all of us can relate to wanting mummy and daddy's approval, right? And it's a very human sort of emotion, and definitely something to connect to as well. So good looking out.
Yeah, sure. It's time we add a chapter in the Bible when Jesus had his queer adventures, because people need to learn, and if the Bible is the only way they accept it, that chapter needs to be added.
You need the Judas and the Rainbow Messiah, eh?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Well, I am going to reference another Peacock show that we've been enjoying a lot, and that is the recently released Chris Redd, Jack Knight, Langston Kerman, Sam J series Bust Fucking Down.
Oh, wow. That's a gem right there.
And I know I keep talking about the first 11 minutes being all you need as a corporate company to buy for your HR videos, but the HR department in Bust Down, Freddie Gibbs, shout outs all around. If you would like OT and I to be your HR surveillance on Twitter and Instagram, we're at For Your Ref Pod.
Write us an email at hello@podcast.com.
We're also on Jeffrey, the Kingpin in Britain, US, and all around the world podcast, if you'd like to leave a rating and review. And we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
Bye.